What is happening? J Game Dude here, and I have one very simple question to ask you. Is Marathon going to be a similar style of failure as Concord? That's an interesting question to put out there because we now have some information, supposedly. This is just reported, this is just rumors. Nothing official has yet been confirmed, but apparently Bungie's Marathon is going to be selling for $40, 40 USD or 40 freedom bucks or whatever you want to call it. Now, before I get into the actual article itself, just wanted to say, hey, if you like my videos, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, because all of those things leave a positive reaction to YouTube, and YouTube then proliferates the videos and my channel to other people's homepages, up next, and whatever have you. So that would certainly be appreciated. But with all of that being said, let's actually jump into the conversation at hand. So this is going to seem like a very apples versus oranges versus pears versus dragon fruit type of conversation, because consider that Sony has published Helldivers 2, which is a PvE title that was quite successful and sold for $40. Quite successful indeed. Lend mostly by the fact that the PC audience are the ones that took it a significant step further than PlayStation, but yet successful regardless. Then we have Concord, an absolute failure that is a live service hero shooter that was released and then unreleased 2 weeks later, with full refunds being given out and also priced at $40. Now, we have Marathon, which is a PvEVP. It's pretty much supposed to be a type of extraction shooter, similar to like games like Tarkov and Rainbow Six Extraction, I guess. I really don't know of a lot of other extraction shooters off the top of my head, if I'm being completely honest. So pretty much the idea is, with Bungie charging $40 for Marathon, immediately is that going to kill the actual viability of the product? And normally people would say immediately yes. However, I'm actually going to put my foot down and say not really, because this is where it comes to the apples versus oranges versus pears versus dragon fruit type of example, where as a PvE game, Helldivers 2 made sense to sell for money because it's a PvE game. But when you look at PvP hero shooters, Concord being sold at $40 didn't make any sense because all of its competitors are all free-to-play games. Whether you look at Overwatch 2, whether you look at Marvel Rivals coming out, hero shooters by all accounts are not worth paying for, and the market has since dictated that, hey, it's all gotta be free, pretty much. If you want to jump in, it's gotta be free, and then you need to make a monetization around the free-to-play model. People are not going to pay to play a hero shooter anymore, and the only time they ever really did was when Overwatch originally released, and even then Battleborn was just the Pepsi to Overwatch's Coke effectively, and that just kind of really settled the battle right then and there between the two games. So yeah, now with Bungie charging $40 for Marathon, that makes significantly more sense because Tarkov, or Escape from Tarkov, is selling for so much more in terms of money. And I'm sure there are other extraction shooters out there, but they aren't necessarily free to play. So I can kind of understand why Marathon might cost some amount of money but not make it completely dead in the water at the same time. It just has to be fairly competent for it to be successful. And the reason why I say this is because games like Tarkov are infested with cheaters, are selling for insane amounts of money, and is just not quite as a quality experience. But it is a very specific type of experience as a extraction shooter in its own right. So unless the flavor of Marathon is good enough to be able to persuade people to give it a try, but sell it for a significantly discounted price to some of its competitors. It's going to be interesting to see how this whole thing is going to go about. But let's actually talk about how this information now publicly has come to be. According to multiple sources talking to the Game Post, who suggested the PvP extraction shooter's launch price could match that of 2 other live services recently published by Sony. They include one of the year's biggest releases, Helldivers 2, and one of 2024's biggest flops, Concord, both of which were released for PS5 and PC. Sony said in May that Helldivers 2 became PlayStation's fastest selling game launch ever, with sales far exceeding expectations at 12 million copies sold in its first 12 weeks. In contrast, Sony pulled Concord from sale, took the game offline within 2 weeks of its release last month, following reports that it may have sold as few as 25,000 copies. Unlike Helldivers 2 and Concord, Marathon is also this is actually a good point, is coming to Xbox Series S and X with full crossplay and full cross-save across PC and consoles. And so now there has been reports of like how they're moving away from an individual character that you play as to then pick between pre-created characters, almost like as if it is a hero shooter. But then that actually gets kind of nipped in the bud immediately, because it seems like those heroes that you play as are actually classes. So it's more like a class-based structure rather than a character/hero-based structure, which does seem to add an interesting wrinkle to the game. Now, whether or not it's actually going to be a failure or a success only can be dictated by the market when it fully releases. So I'm actually just going to go into that little bit that I just mentioned. One source told the Game Post that the core gameplay structure of the class-based sci-fi shooter is similar to the titles like Escape from Tarkov, but with a Bungie twist, and I do wonder what that looks like, because for something to be a Bungie twist, it needs to be some sort of element that you see similarly between the Halo franchise, the original Halo games, not the ones that 343 made, of course, the original ones, and Destiny ultimately. And it does kind of make me wonder, hey, with this whole movement towards a live service future, or at least attempting to release multiple live services, with that being said, I don't believe there's a lot of PlayStation gamers that are actually looking forward to this or are particularly excited about the prospect, given that, of course, live service titles are deemed to be just like pretty much a massive negative due to the nature in which they release, pretty much the cycle of patches, content, and just each and everything else in between. Unless it was free to play, but it's just a very heavily monetized game. It just makes me kind of scratch my head a little bit and think, why bring back an old franchise when the new game has nothing to do with said old franchise and is now donning a completely different identity to, albeit a smaller group of games in the market? It just kind of makes me wonder, like, what is going to happen here? Because I'm honestly not sure at all. This isn't necessarily uncharted territory that we're going to, so much as an unpredictable one. Because with hero shooters, we all knew how Concord was going to fare. With Marathon, we have some idea that it could fare particularly badly. Marathon, on the other hand, Fair Games. Did I say that? Yes. Fair Games, we think is going to perform quite badly. Marathon, on the other hand, we just don't know where the hell this is going to go. Is it going to land heads? Is it going to land tails? Because the fact of the matter is that with, say, something like Tarkov that has a massive cheating problem, how is Marathon going to be able to curb such a thing? Obviously, Marathon is coming in at a significantly lower price point than that of Tarkov, and there are other games that are also within the same area in terms of an extraction shooter, but every game also has its different flavor of extraction shooter. So what flavor will Bungie and ultimately Marathon bring to the table that or may or may not already exist in the market as it does today. I'm fascinated to hear what everyone kind of has to say about this, because it isn't necessarily just a negative video, this one, but rather a very predictive sort of analyst look at what the industry is like, because I can only predict and give some thoughts and opinions about the general idea of, hey, this is what we've seen so far in the past, this is what the current environment looks like, what does the future look like? That we cannot be 100% on, but I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say about this, so please feel free to chuck that in the comments below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe to the channel, of course. I'm aiming for 300 subs by the end of the year. I do have a Patreon, so if you want to toss a few bucks my way and help support the channel, you can absolutely do that through the link in the description below. And with all that being said and done, I do upload every day, so I'll see you guys tomorrow.